Hello, I'm Pastor Ray of Christ Missionary Baptist Church on the west side of Indianapolis. And I'm excited and delighted today to talk about one of my favorite books. I'm in sole agreement with the author of David Fitch. And the book is titled The Faithful Presence, 7 Disciplines That Shape the Church for Mission. And boy, I love mission. That's one of my favorite words is being being missional, and also the church being on mission, going out and sharing the redemptive love of Jesus Christ in our community and in our context, and also around the world, that we have the responsibilities of ambassadors of Christ to be God's representative to the world. What an awesome honor and privilege it is to be God's representative to the world, sharing his divine redemptive love with mankind, with people. And so I want to talk about conclusion number 1 from the book. Is it talks about his presence. And I'm going to read this. It says, faithful presence names the reality that God is present in the world, and that he uses faithful people to his presence to make himself a concrete and the real aim of the world's struggle and pain. When the church is this faithful presence, God's kingdom becomes visible and the world is invited to join with God. Faithful presence is not only essential for our lives as Christians, it's how God has chosen to change the world. In his presence, there is forgiveness, reconciliation, healing, transformation, patience, and best of all, love. In his presence, he renews all things. Presence is how God works, but he requires a people tending to his presence. And that's from David Fitch in his book. And God has always wanted to be present in the life of man. When he approached Abraham, he was present in Abraham's life, and he present in Moses' life when he spoke to him at the burning bush, and present with Israel. Israel was supposed to be that representative of God's presence in the world. And then in the New Testament, Jesus comes to be the presence of God revealed in man, in humanity and divinity at the same time, revealing the presence of God. And then now believers, we have that responsibility as ambassadors of Christ to reveal the presence of God. And so the author wants, and I agree with the author, he wants us to know that God is present everywhere we are. We must just be attuned to his presence every day of our lives. Everywhere we go, we must be in tune to the presence of God, because God is ready to work as we engage people wherever we are. And so when we talk about engaging people, conclusion number 2 is we talk about engaging people in the closed circle, that half circle, and the dotted circle. And the first circle is the closed circle. This closed circle, it says the disciple first creates a closed circle of committed subjects to Christ. All are in mutual submission to Christ and to one another in this closed circle. So a closed circle would be when we have Bible study. That's a closed circle of believers. Most times it's just only believers there. A closed circle would be when we have our Sunday worship experience, or when we do the Lord's Supper. Those are closed circles, and God is present in those closed circles as we mutually submit to one another, ready and willing for God to work, to bring healing, to bring reconciliation and forgiveness towards one another. Also, he operates in a dotted circle. This space is represented as a dotted circle because even though this space is defined by a circle of committed followers, there is a space for neighbors and strangers to enter in and watch what God is doing in the circle. So when we have our church events and we invite people into our church events, our soul food dinner that we just had, or our vacation Bible school, or any other event where we're recognizing people in the community for their contributions, when we have these events out there in our community, then we invite them in, and God is present when we invite them in. And we ought to be really ready and willing and available, like Isaiah said, here I am, Lord, send me to represent you in this event, in this setting that we've invited people in, ready to make his presence known. Then the other one is a half circle. This space is a hassle because here the Christian goes among the world as a guest. Here the Christian also extends a special presence of Christ into the world, just as what the daughter circle. So now I've been invited into their space. It's like when Jesus was invited to the tax collector's house. He invited them over for a party. He went into their space, and people wanted him in their space. They welcomed Jesus in their space. And so, hey, it ought to be the same with us. We ought to be welcome into spaces of unchurched and unsaved people and ready to make God's presence known in their environment. When we go to Walmart, when we go to Target, when we go to restaurants, wherever it may be, that we ought to be ready to attune to the presence of God and see what God is going to do in his presence. And so conclusion number three. And the author also, I agree with, talks about attuning to this presence when we have these 7 disciplines he talks about. The discipline of the Lord's table, the discipline of reconciliation, the discipline of proclaiming the gospel, the discipline of being with the least of these, the discipline of being with children, the discipline of the fivefold gifting, and the discipline of the kingdom prayer. And he wants us to know that whenever we're in these situations, the Lord's table, that God is ready to work and make his presence and love known. When we in the discipline of reconciliation, even when we have disagreements and we come to reconcile, when discuss a disagreement, God is still present. When we proclaim the gospel, he said, "Lo, I'll be with you," as you go out there and share the gospel, that God is present. When we serve in our church and we help feed the homeless and feed people who are in shelters, the least of these, God is present. When we have our children's church and we minister to children, God is still present. When people are operating their gifts, their spiritual gifts, that God is present in that operation. And when we do the prayer, that God is that he's present. And so we want to make sure that we understand that we be available always and ready to be attuned to the presence of God as we go out here as ambassadors of Christ. So in closing, it says, in the space of his presence, we can now respond to God as witnesses. We invite people into the resulting fellowship, reconciliation, proclamation of the gospel, economic sharing, and flourishing that comes when people submit to the King. Our presence tending to his presence undermines the systems of violence and resists the powers of the enemy. And so let us always be ready, prayed up and ready, to tune to the presence of God, to see God work through us to be a blessing to other people so they can experience the love and the power of God. So God bless you and thank you for listening.